My name is Sylwia Jurczyk, and as one of this year's Symposium volunteers, I would like to welcome you to the Co-Evolving as the Future of IT Strategy panel. It is my great privilege to introduce our panel moderator, Joe Peppard. Joe is the principal research scientist at MIT Sloan Center for Information Systems Research. He researches, teaches, and consults in the domains of IT leadership, digital strategy and innovation, the execution of digital transformation programs, the creation of value from IT investments, and the role, structure, and capabilities of IT unit in contemporary organization. Please welcome Joe Peppard.
Well, welcome to this session on co-evolving is that the future of IT strategy. So as you can guess, this is a panel that's going to discuss one of the more enduring concepts in IT, the IT strategy. I suppose ever since computers first entered companies, companies have thought about the need to have some sort of a strategy guiding their investments in information technology. Yes, it's been an enduring concept. And if we look at how organizations have, for many, many decades, approached the challenge of building an IT strategy, it's essentially been through the process of alignment. It's looking to align the investment portfolio with the strategy of the business. And indeed, if we look at surveys conducted over the last 30, 40 years, seeking alignment, if it's not the #1 issue, it has always been in the top 3 issues that CIOs report as being a challenge for them. And from the research that we've been doing, particularly in recent years, we're sort of beginning to challenge this concept of alignment and actually wonder, is the concept relevant today? Has it actually outlived its usefulness? And perhaps what we need is a concept that sort of recognizes where technology is today, the role that technology is playing in business. And in fact, and it's been said on a number of occasions on a number of the panels today, that the lines between technology and the business are blurring. And what I'm sort of suggesting is that in the shift away from alignment, perhaps the concept of coevolution might be a more appropriate concept with which to think about technology and business, with which to think about how organizations can co-evolve their strategy and the investment portfolio and technology. But you're not looking to co-evolve with the business. You're looking to co-evolve with the customers and the ecosystem. And that's a fundamentally different challenge. And the notion of kind of coevolution I'm drawing upon comes from biology. It actually comes from, there's a theory of biology that was formed in the 1960s by US population biologist Ralph Ehrlich and botanist Peter Raven. And what it refers to is kind of the evolutionary changes that occur in genetically unrelated species as they interact with each other in their environments. And an example of the process of coevolution is how fruit-eating birds have co-evolved with the plants that they eat. And as the plants themselves have evolved to make it easier for the birds to actually get the fruit and therefore disperse the seeds, the birds themselves have also evolved. And I also think it's a nice concept for today's digital world, where we see organizations, more as organisms and less as machines. And we talk increasingly about ecosystems. And just maybe to give you some image to have in your mind as you listen to the panel, I'll maybe ask you a question. What's on the screen there? What have you got on the screen? It's not a trick question. It's a camera. Yeah, it's a camera. Now, do you remember 20, 22 years ago when digital cameras first appeared. Yeah? And your friend bought one. And you would sort of say, oh, wow, you've got a digital camera. I've just got a camera. Yeah? Now today, when was the last time you ever referred to a camera as being a digital camera? I can't remember the last time I referred to a camera. It's just a camera. And I think maybe that might be the idea to think about strategy. 20 years ago, we might have said, well, we've got a business strategy and we've got a digital strategy. Today, we don't really have that distinction. Like a camera, a digital camera, it's just a camera. It's just a strategy. So let me introduce my panelists. Can I please ask them to come out on the stage? Come out, guys, come out. So don't be shy. So we've got four great panelists from 4 different industries. So the first panelist is Gail Evans from Mercer, a professional services organization. Gail was actually one of the CIO finalists. We've got Tom Harvey from Alkermes, which is a biopharma company. Belkis, Vasquez-McCall from McKinsey and Company. And then we get Vivek Gurumurthy from Verizon. So welcome.
Thank you.
So maybe just to kick off proceedings, if I can ask you maybe just to give the audience who may not be familiar with your organizations just a brief overview of the organization, and maybe just talk a little bit about the IT strategy in your organization and how that strategy is viewed within the company, and particularly how you view the IT strategy as a CIO.
Sure. So Verizon, over the years, has evolved, and I was just talking to my fellow panelists here. From a regulated baby bell, over the years in the last, I would say, 2 decades, from a wireline-based phone company to a wireless company, and now with where we want to go with 5G and what kind of experiences we want to provide. Right now, we are at the cusp of a big 4th industrial revolution, and that's what we want to see happen. And that being the North Star of where we want to take the company, we've changed the way we've organized, and now from a legacy wireline to a wireless, we are now organized as consumer and business. And to the earlier point that you were making, we want to be aligned with the customer. So it's all about the customer, and we are organized now by the customer rather than by the network and the technology. And in my business, I support the Verizon Consumer Group. And central to our Verizon Consumer Group strategy is the 5G growth strategy. And as we look at where technology is going, and I'll again steal one of your examples that you just gave, nobody ever refers to a camera as digital camera anymore. And what that means is that we moved past the digital age, and we are now entering the algorithmic age. And as we look at where we are going and what we want to do and how we want to position the customer experience for 5G, everything is about data. It's all about how we monetize data, how we provide a seamless customer experience with the data, and how we provide the best touchpoint experience for the customer on demand, wherever they want it, whenever they want it. And that is the notion around which we are centralizing our strategy. And when we look at that, as we talk about technology and how technology can shape the business and shape the customer experience, on the other side of the landscape is how technology itself is shifting. We are moving from on-prem to cloud. We are moving from all kinds of digital native technologies. And given the history of Verizon, we have every technology that has been invented in the last 50 years. And it is a journey that we have to take. As part of the journey, we had to transform our technology, we had to transform our people, and we had to transform our culture. So core to this strategy is efficiency, speed, and innovation. Historically, if you talk to any IT organization, they would tell you that strategy revolves around efficiency and risk and cost. But where we want to go now is efficiency, speed, and innovation, and keep up with the times and stay close to the customer. And as we look at this lens, there is so much that we have to look into simultaneously. We had to transform the customer experience, deliver systems of insights and systems of engagement, power experiences. We had to transform the culture of the company. We had to reskill the employees. Talent transformation is a huge part of this whole thing, because at the end of the day, without the employees, there is not much we can do. And how we organize ourselves and be lockstep with the business and transform from if I look at the history of what was said before, from an order taker to a partner and a strategic partner, and now where we are going is a IT-led business and an IT-driven business strategy. That is where we want to take this whole thing, and that is central to how we want to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Belkis, you've worked in many industries.
I have.
Maybe give us a sense of if there are any particular industry that maybe you might want to focus on, or do you want to just from your experience looking across industries, how do you see IT being, I suppose, determined, that the strategy for IT being pulled together, maybe compared to when you would have started your career?
Absolutely, and I've been in the industry though for over 20 years, and what I've seen across sectors and industry is that more and more, when you think about a strategy, similar to your analogy of a camera is a camera, there within IT and business is just becoming one end-to-end strategy. So as you think about how you want to serve your customers, as you think about what do you want to stand for and what is your mission, what I'm seeing is that organizations are thinking about what is that strategy around how do we serve our customers? How do we make sure that we're customer-centric? And based on that, you organize yourself, whether it's through your customer journeys or how you sort of organize your teams to make sure that you have that end-to-end holistic view. Because the other thing that I would share, even as a firm, McKinsey & Company is a large global consulting firm, we also have one strategy, right? It's a strategy of how do we serve our clients and how do we make sure that we're unlocking growth and impact for our clients. We have technology capabilities, and even within the organization, we have digital and analytics capability, but we have one strategy to serve our clients.
Okay. Tom, in your company, a biopharm company?
Yeah, so Alkermes is a biotech, biopharma company that's fully integrated, where we do our research and development, we do our manufacturing, we do our commercialization. And we've seen our strategy at a business level move very much to ensure that we're including the patient voice in a lot of the activities that we're driving through really all of those functions. And with the IT strategy, we've almost made a compact. It's sort of like an IT compact as opposed to an IT strategy that talks about the outcomes that we're trying to get within the business. So if you were to look at our IT strategy today, you'd see 6 or 8 bullet points, but they're bullet points that are things like accelerate the research and development programs, to help what we can do to ensure good data in terms of accurate data coming through clinical trials, helping the operations units be more effective in how they manufacture the products that we're making, et cetera. And they're at a very broad level. And then we do talk about IT capabilities that we need to do at a broad base that kind of lead to an overall tagline that we've had for a number of years that's around collaborate, innovate, and accelerate. So we feel that our job is to look at the business strategy and find a way to do those activities.
Okay. Gail at Mercer?
So I'm from Mercer. We make a difference in people's lives from early in your career until you retire. And that is a powerful statement, which keeps us very much in tune with what our clients and their employees are doing in the market. So it's interesting because, you know, the strategy, the IT strategy is really to enable the business objectives, right? When people think of digital, they think it's some separate thing, something you do on the side, but it actually has to be a part of your business strategy. It has to be included in the business strategy. It has to determine how we're going to monetize this new technology to drive value back to our stakeholders, to drive value back to our clients and their experience, and also to drive value back to our colleagues. And so our strategy has all 3 pillars: our clients, our stakeholders, and our colleagues, but it's all tethered to what business objectives are we trying to accomplish? And we are a growth vector for the company, but that growth is embedded into a business strategy across health, across wealth, and across career. So I think of myself as a business partner thinking about strategy for my clients, as opposed to some drive-by technology team that you might want to engage at certain times in the life cycle. So we want to be at the table, we want to be creative, we want to be innovative, and we want to accelerate.
And I remember when I started teaching strategy, IT strategy, and how you might go about building an IT strategy. One of the things was that, you build an IT strategy, and then you may visit it maybe 12 months later and maybe give it a revisit.
Or 6 years later.
Or 6 years later even, yeah. But today, obviously, that doesn't wash. So what's your experiences in relation to making sure that, as I said, that both of them sort of co-evolve together, and that old view of strategy is something you build and then you work towards. In a digital world, that's not how things work. So how do you make the investments in technology continue to stay relevant to where the business is going? What's that? How does that process look like on a day-to-day basis?
If I look at it, the way we do this, the systems that we have are, like I said, we have multiple technologies in our stack. And if the business is headed in certain direction, IT has to skate to where the puck is going and not start skating once the puck has been passed. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we'll always be late. So for us, we have to think about it in a way where we have to anticipate the needs of the business, and the strategy needs to be ahead of the demands of the business. And the best way to think about it for us is put ourselves in the shoes of the customer and see what the customer would like to want and see in a year or two from now, and start preparing towards that. Because we all know here, magic doesn't happen in 6 months.
And do you do that with the business, or?
Of course.
Okay.
Because if you hear the president of our unit talk, central to his strategy is the systems of insight and the systems of engagement that we want to deliver for the business to provide a seamless customer experience. And those statements are very powerful because those experiences can be realized only with investments in IT. IT empowers the customer, IT empowers the frontline employees, IT delivers for the shareholder and the society. These are the 4 pillars around which we anchor our strategy. So whenever we think of our strategy, we have to anticipate the needs of the business and the customer and get ahead of this thing. Mm-hmm. And it has to be in lockstep with the business. A strategy that is not signed up by the business, I don't think it's going to go too far.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gail. I was just going to say, one comment that you made that I struggle with a little bit in my experience is when you said you have to be in front of the business, because my fear has always been if we get too far in front of the business, it's pretty irrelevant, and what we've chosen to do is usually not very well aligned. So I think you want to make sure your capabilities are there as it relates to scale, or if you can truly see something coming, making those investments. But I think it's pretty important that we not get too far ahead and that we certainly not get too far behind and too reactionary with it. So I think it does drive that ongoing conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's a test and learn. I think technology is moving at such a pace that we have to understand how that technology will potentially disrupt our business or the businesses that you serve. And that's something that you have to keep a pulse on for your business partners, because these startups are creating new value propositions very quickly, and if you're caught on your back foot, you could potentially be disrupted. So what we've implemented is a design thinking where we co-create with our business partners to say, hey, what problem are you trying to solve? Can we apply this different technology and value to it? So that's the design thinking, but we also have what we call a technology garage and an incubator So we can incubate value propositions that may not be appealing to the business. And then we use a stage gate where we meter funding so that we can test to an alpha phase and decide to exit if it doesn't meet the demand or the KPIs that's chosen.
I guess just to add to that, I think what you're hearing and what I'm seeing also is the fact that you have to co-create that vision, and it's okay to sometimes think that you're ahead, but ahead aligned to where you're going, right? So what is that journey that you need to be sort of leading together? And as part of that, you need to be thinking about, well, how do I get there? How do I accelerate some of my capabilities to ensure that I'm encouraging the business to really push the thinking on what do they need to serve their clients? How do they serve their customer in totally new ways?
If I may add here, in the previous panel, you said that, hey, it has to be business and IT together, and they're merging. The lines are blurring. So in a lot of ways, the business strategy is influenced by where technology is going. And we have to have a seat at the table to inform our business and advise the business on what can be possible, what is the art of possible with technology. When that is done, I think the business will be very much aligned with you being 6 months, 1 year ahead of them. And I don't think that, I think as long as we are all on the same page, it should be fine.
Right, right. And I suppose there you're alluding to the fact that technology is not just an enabler, as it was historically been seen as, but very much the shaper. Right. It enables the company to do things, new business models, for example, that are just not possible without technology. Gail, you raised something that I think is quite interesting, is that you're not just looking at the potential disruptive impact of technology on your business. You said you're also looking at the potentially disruptive impact that technology may have on the business of your customers.
That's right.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about that and how you might go about, trying to ascertain what that might look like?
Well, I think the worst thing you can do is go and sell something to a customer and their mind is somewhere else. Their problem is somewhere else. Their pain points are not the topic you've brought to them today. So like a McKinsey, you want to go in and, yeah, I told her I was going to sneak that in, by the way.
Because we all want to be McKinsey when we grow up.
Because we all want to be McKinsey when we grow up, so there you have it. But, so back to answering the question. So I also think that you need to, because of the ecosystem is happening today, your client can also be your partner in a value stream, in an ecosystem. So it's best to understand how they're participating in different ecosystems, how you can add value to them, as well as they adding value to your value proposition. So this whole, economics around ecosystem is driving many different business models. And because it's driving so many business models, you have to know more about your client's disruption than you have ever needed to know in the past.
Right. Tom, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that you have business relationship managers. Maybe can you talk a little bit about what their role is and how they sort of maybe influence the development of strategy at the company?
Yeah, I think that the whole idea of a BRM has been around for a long time. We tend to have most of our BRMs not as a standalone position, but kind of aligned with either our project managers or the managers of the IT function within that group, or sometimes more the management team or executives of it. And part of that is our scale and our size. And I think it's really important to make sure that when you are looking at a BRM role, that standalone role is you ensure that it's not ineffective for both technology and for the business. So in many cases, I think those BRM roles are partner roles that you kind of have those, what we would call SMEs, or subject matter experts from the business, and you have kind of that leader from IT that jointly kind of create that role together. At least in our size of the enterprise. I think as you get larger and you really have a much larger customer base, and it's all about prioritization and it's all about kind of maybe another level of communication. But I think the closer you can have it to the business and the closer you can have it to the actual technology project, the more effective it's going to be.
Okay. And any of your other organizations have BRMs?
We do, but we also augmented that in a different way because one of the things that we were seeing that was not happening is the innovation part of it was missing and the advisory function was missing with the BRM, and we wanted to augment that. Okay. So the way we have changed the organization a little bit here is the portfolio owners or the application directors and the leaders there are directly plugged into the business themselves on a day-to-day basis. So that way they know the business well, and again, like we discussed, the strength is in knowing the business. And more we know the business, more we can innovate for the business, and that's the way we look at it.
Okay, but in partnership.
Absolutely, absolutely. Everything, it goes without saying. Stakeholdering is the key to everything here. Without stakeholdering, I think IT as a function will have a hampered execution mode.
Tom, you sort of gave us kind of a glimpse of what your kind of IT strategy looked like. I think you said it's a number of kind of bullet points. What about Gail? If I was to kind of ask you to show me your IT strategy, what would it look like?
It would look like a pillar on digital capabilities. What is it that the business in the future would need? Because the funny thing about technology, it takes a little while to build a capability, so you want to be ahead. So what we did was we decided to set a vision to take our legacy platform and start to modernize that. But in order to modernize, we needed a digital core. So we took on a modernization strategy to digitize our core, and we created what we call the Mercer Os, which is an open source architecture that allows us to create an API economy inside of Mercer and be able to modernize our legacy, but also be able to build new solutions in an agile and quick way. So
Are you sure you don't work for McKinsey?
No, but if they're
Sounds like what
offering,
you would
are you
sell to me.
offering me a job or something? So in any event,
I'm sorry.
that joke you'll probably hear for the rest of the session. So it'll have the digital capabilities. It also has empowering and innovation with our colleagues. So we do need to have that fire in the gut. We need to, inspire our colleagues in a way in which they would really want to learn new skills, build new skills, and drive different value propositions. Because your value propositions come from your SMEs. They know the business. And if you can inspire them to think differently, they will begin to show you different value propositions. And the third one is around data and analytics. How do we monetize data? You notice I didn't say a big data platform, but if you just throw data into a data lake with no vision or value proposition or no business model to extract that data from a data monetization perspective, then it becomes a swamp. And so we don't build swamps. We try to figure out what the outcomes are that the business wants to achieve. And if the business aren't thinking about outcomes, we try to encourage that very strongly, actually.
Okay. And Vivek, again, the same question to you. If I was to ask you, what does your IT strategy look like? How would you describe it?
I would say, like I said in the opening, we have a 3-year plan, and we are in the journey right now. We are in the middle of, I would say, a little more than halfway through. And central to this is efficiency, speed, and innovation. And we've been transforming the entire IT organization to be more of a technology advisor and a solutions provider to the business. And to that effect, we've renamed IT within our company to be called Global Technology Solutions. And that is a message that we want to send to our employees as well, that they are empowered to provide technology solutions. And they're not just here to enable the business. In fact, the mindset we want to have and the culture change that we want to drive is that we are here as advisors and we lead the business with technology.
Okay.
I mean, one thing that I would add, which I'm seeing more and more as you think about the IT strategy, is this evolution of not only being the advisor, but how are you co-shaping the problem? And if I think about being in the industry for 20 years, in the past, many years ago, if you think about it, the business would define the problem, they would define how to resolve the problem, and then they would expect IT just to execute and solve it. Then we moved on to, they would define the problem, and then they'll ask IT to figure out how to solve it and execute. And now the tables are sort of turning. Now what I'm seeing in sort of some of the IT executives is that they're coming to the table and they're helping to co-define what's the problem and with the business and sort of lead that evolution around how do we define the problem together and solve it as a team.
Yeah, we call that co-creation and co-innovation. You know, no one has the market on co-creating. We need to come together. We have to come together in order to participate in this new economy. It has to be a co-creation. I totally agree with you. If not, we leave money on the table, and also I think the colleagues really want to be a part of something great. They do, and they want to deliver something great. And so we do need to co-create from the people on the shop floor to the executive level to instill that culture.
Right. And I would assume therefore that it's imperative that as a CIO or a chief digital officer, and CIO, that you are part of that exec team, and that you report directly into the CEO. With that, and again, I would imagine that that's kind of a change that we, particularly I'd say, Belkis, you've seen over the last 20 years. That probably in the 20 years ago, CIO or probably IT director back then reported into finance or ops.
And more I'm seeing where the IT executives are part of the top team.
Yeah.
They're helping to shape the direction of the organization, and they're influencing their peers. They're influencing their peers on how do they need to think about the overarching strategy, how do they think about talent, how do you think about the people sort of model. So just across, IT leaders are showing up quite differently.
Right.
And I think within our industry, there are some folks that report directly to the CEO, but many of them do report into a president or some other executive. But at the same time, we have a seat at the table at the executive committee. Right. So we may not be sort of in that top complete level, but still have more of a seat at the table. And I think I think we sort of saw a shift where many people went to the CEO, and then the CEO almost didn't really know what to do with us and kind of put us kind of in an area that was a little more focused around operations or another element of the business. Right.
And again, I know from the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago that you operate in an industry that's highly regulated. Yeah. How does that impact the IT strategy and what you do with technology and the speed at which you kind of absorb new technologies?
Yeah, it's pretty significant for us. I think in the areas that are more regulated and we have a lot of compliance, particularly I guess the biggest one being the FDA, they expect us to predict how a clinical trial is going to read out years before we actually even start the trial. So by the time we go through and we define it and we start to enroll in it, we're not really able to change things about the trial. Similarly, in our manufacturing, we sort of operate as old school equipment, that once those settings are set and the automation is set within those machines in terms of driving that process, there's an expectation that they're not going to change. And when you try to innovate or make little tweaks here and there, it actually creates a bit of regulatory havoc for us. So I think we're hoping that over time, the regulators will take a much more risk-based approach and a much more agile approach to it, but there's just so low tolerance for error. And when there are errors, you're expected to describe exactly what happened, why, and it creates sort of this large paperwork trail that's sort of an endless pit that we try to avoid.
And do any of you use portfolio management to manage that investments that you make or that you're hoping to make in technology? I see you nodding, Gail.
Oh, absolutely. Monthly, actually. We have monthly portfolio reviews In fact, our CEO, Martine Ferland, is adamant about driving our business through KPIs and being able to measure them on a very frequent basis so that you can make better decisions. So having a data-driven culture, portfolio management capability is just imperative. It's without it, I don't know how you decide what you keep focusing on and what you need to terminate. Right. So we have a portfolio management at my level, but also now at the CEO's level on the top investments for the firm.
Right. And same for you as well?
Absolutely. Portfolio management is key for discipline of where the investments are and what the returns are from the investment. And in a fast-paced environment like ours, where every month we make changes in order to keep up with the marketing or the customer experience needs, it is important to ensure that we are actually going in the right direction with the metrics. We have performance scorecards. So portfolio management and the rigor and the discipline is very, very key to this whole thing.
Right. And then in relation to KPIs, do any of you have customer-facing KPIs like NPS as a part of your scorecard?
Absolutely. NPS, and also if you look at one of the things that we track is the My Verizon app, and what is the rating the customers provide on that? Because that is a direct reflection of our digital strategy and where we are with the digital progress on that.
Okay.
So we do track quite a few of the customer metrics.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you see in Belkis in relation to clients you work with?
No, I agree. I mean, I think tracking KPI, I think the other sort of metric that people are tracking is what they call objectives and key results. So really being outcome driven. And when you think about the portfolio management, I'm seeing sort of an uptick on doing quarterly business review. So of course, all your business unit and your IT colleagues, how do you reflect on where have we invested in the last 3 months? Do we want to continue to invest in those areas based on the outcomes that we're seeing and the key results? Or do we need to take a step back and sort of rethink where the investment needs to go? So that rigor around this frequently assess where we are as an organization and sort of adapt to where we need to go.
Okay. And Vivek, you mentioned you've got a 3-year plan for your IT investments. So do you use the portfolio in order to recalibrate that plan?
There is a strategy that we have, and there are investments we make in foundational areas.
Okay.
But then there is also a lot of rigor that we put into operational areas where the investments are for more direct, immediate returns. Okay. So there is a long-term portfolio management and there's a short-term portfolio management. So on both fronts, we have a tight rigor there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Tom, in
yeah, I would say our portfolio management is probably not as mature as it could be, and we just sort of crossed that $1 billion mark in sales, and so there's certainly project-level reporting. There's certainly the broader business reviews. I don't know that we look at it fully as a complete portfolio yet, but I can see a definite move in that direction.
Okay. You mentioned earlier the blurring of the lines between IT and the business. How is that being reflected in your IT organizations? Has your IT organizations changed in order sort of to meet that reality?
We've always believed that the strength of our organization is in how much we know the business.
Okay.
So we are very much ingrained in the day-to-day of the business. So for IT, it is natural for us to understand the impacts of technology to business and be a leaning in force into what the business can do and where we can take the business. What we are now increasingly seeing is that the business is also understanding technology much better, and they're also, in some cases, leaning in, and in some cases, seeking advice as well. So it is becoming what is mutually beneficial relationship at this point.
Okay. And Tom, as your IT unit sort of gone through any changes in order to reflect those new realities?
Yeah, we certainly have. I think, when we recruit, we're usually looking for cultural fit and business acumen as much as we're looking for the technology. I mean, there's certain jobs where you really want core hardcore people that you want to put in the closet in the back room, but it's so business facing now, and kind of back to your comment of co-creation, there's just a need to come to the table together. And I kind of mentioned it earlier when we were talking about the BRMs, but I work really hard to make sure that the business has skin in the game with their subject matter experts and the people that are somewhat technology savvy, and we're coming to the table with either project managers or solutions that are with also a business savvy view, that together that's a much more successful project than the business trying to deliver and throw something over the wall to us, or us trying to build it and hope they'll use it.
Right, right. And Gail at Mercer?
Yeah, there is, I'll tell you a little story. I got an email from a technical leader, and he said in his email, and he sent it to me and the business partner, and he said, hey, guess what? If we're able to leverage the data connector here, we can save the company $800,000. And that's what you want, right? You want to be able to have them think about the business objectives. And he's a technologist, he's an engineer, but he knows that if he can drive efficiency for the company, we all win. So we've blurred the lines and we've aligned. We don't call them BRMs, but it's the same sort of principle. But they're expected to know. So there's a person we've assigned with wealth, for example, and that person is expected to know technology and business and be a strategic partner, understand the industry so that there's a go-to pull and a push. Like, hey, we can talk to Ed because he knows about technology and digital, and so we create value and cool points with the business when we're able to come up with solutions that they may not have thought about.
And you win when they start inviting the IT people to those meetings.
That's right.
Where they don't meet with the vendors without the IT people in the room. I think that's when you've built that partnership.
But we're on a journey. I don't want to leave the impression to this audience that it's all complete, because it isn't. And I don't think it ever will be, by the way. I think new technology will come in, and there'll be another set of problems we need to solve with it. So it will continue to evolve, but the relationship and the partnership will change, will definitely change. Right.
And if you had sort of active programs in order to increase the kind of the digital literacy or IT savvy of the business?
We do. We have a digital fluency that's being developed by MMC, which is a parent company, Marsh & McLennan company, and so they've our CEO Dan Glazer has kicked off a digital fluency so that everyone can get to speak a similar language, and we've also we have design thinking sessions with our business partners, right? And we co-create new value. We pick a pain point, like the most recent one was how do we monetize data in a particular line of business. We had business people there, we had technology people, we had infrastructure, everyone that needed to participate in the new way of thinking was in that meeting, and they came out with 3 use cases that will test and learn, right? We'll build out an alpha, and we'll bound the investment, and we'll decide if that investment, based on the KPIs that we chose to determine success by, we'll decide whether we will keep it or retire it. But it's all based on those digital capabilities that we built. So in order to get to that alpha is a short, agile sprint, 90 days, 120 days. We try to keep it in that timeline, and we test it with our clients, who are also, by the way, in the meetings as we are co-creating.
Okay.
And I think just to add to that, to your comment around, one, blurring the lines, and also how do you get the business to be digital savvy. The teams that I've been part of where they've been very successful is when you go in the room and you can't tell who's from the business and who's from IT, because they're working in a way where the IT colleagues, they're able to come up with the right solutions and come up with great ideas. And from a business perspective, they're at the table with the team, helping to set the direction and the guidance, and they're empowered to make day-to-day decisions. I think that's when you start to see the lines blur, and then you start to see the business coming up to speed.
Can I remind you that we have Slido if anybody from the audience has a question they would like to put to the panel. I will see it and I will ask it. And there's also a poll or a polling question which I will show the results of in a couple of minutes. So if you haven't had a chance to respond to it, please do. But can I come back to you, Belkis, because I know you've written quite a bit on Agile. And has the kind of the move towards a more kind of agile way of working impacted, how you see companies address some of the issues around technology?
Yeah, and I think you've heard some of it here, right? I think some of it is around how do you rethink your processes? What are the gates that you need to think about differently? How do you serve, what are the enabling functions that need to come to the table to help you? So whether it's finance or HR. The second one is around how do you rethink your people strategy? So what are the roles that you need to have? How do you start to incentivize them to behave differently? So that's part of the agility that you need to think about. And then there's around the structure. So you need to think about how do you set up your teams quite differently. So you mentioned that you set up your teams to be customer focused, right? And customer journey focused. And you need to think about how do you accelerate the pace so that that's another lens. And then the last one is around your technology strategy in terms of your capabilities. How do you think about the capabilities that you need to enable that acceleration and speed? And for an IT leader, as you think about an agile transformation, you now need to think about how do you need to show up differently to enable your teams to really accelerate the impact and bring new ideas to the table. So there's the people, process, technology, and sort of structure that you need to think about as a leader.
And in terms of, let's say, refreshing the IT strategy, what does that process look like in your organization? So you've got a strategy, and as technology is continually to evolve. You've got your portfolio management. How are you looking to refresh your strategy?
I think in this age, you just can't plan more than 6 months to a year. So there will be something new tomorrow. Today it is React. Tomorrow it is Unreact. It'll keep coming. And I think strategy probably, in a way, when we look at it, it cannot be technology dependent. It's got to be insulated a little bit more. And you probably want to plan a little bit longer. But then tactically, when we look at it, there is absolutely a need for us to do a lot of changes every 6 months or a year. But foundationally, there are some elements, like in a telco business, you need a billing system, and the billing system is core to what you do. You need an ordering system. But then now the way you think about these things, you need to build the systems of insight, the systems of engagement. How do we re-platform to the cloud? So these are big programs, and these things we cannot change every 6 months.
Right.
These are big investments as a business we decide to make, and then we go monetize or get the return on investment on these. But then, hey, can I change a price plan? Can I change something else? Those things keep happening every other month. So strategically, I would say we want to take a long-term lens. But absolutely, I think every 6 months we have to refresh and reevaluate what are the capabilities we need in order for the business to move forward. Like you were saying, every day there is a new startup popping up with some solution. So we always have to keep an eye and an ear open to what is it that's coming out there in terms of innovation in the ecosystem and how we can make use of that to deliver better for our customers.
Tom?
I think it's less of the heavy lift than maybe what we had before. When I sort of talked about those bullet points that align with our corporate goals and objectives, on an annual basis, we certainly go back and look at those corporate goals and objectives and say, is there anything different that says we shouldn't be focusing on the example I used before of accelerating the R&D pipeline development in terms of medicine development? So that's never really going to change. But every couple of years, what we do is we do an exercise where we sit down with the business to make sure we're not missing something. So I think it stays pretty fresh on an ongoing basis, but we do take a point in time that's probably about every 2.5 to 3.5 years where we'll say, this is what we focused on, and really get a clean, fresh, almost whiteboard view of what the capabilities are and what the outcomes that they're looking for are, and bounce that up against our application portfolio to understand, are we investing in the right things? Do we have the right capabilities?
Right. And Gail at Mercer?
Yeah, that's a good question, because our technology strategy is a part of the business strategy. So I didn't create a separate technology strategy per se after, once you build the core, it's really about, we have this notion of building for reuse, and we build Lego blocks. So what we want, and we call those capabilities Lego blocks. So what we would like the business to do is, you have Lego blocks, you can co-create, you can innovate, you can snap them together in any way. Now, if there's a Lego block that is missing, then we can engage on, the purpose, the outcome. But there's a playbook that we've actually created, and it's a self-serve. It tells you what the solutions are, what categories of technology as a part of those solutions, what the features are, and then what the technologies that delivered all of that. And so we're trying to get to this learning by seeing the Lego blocks come together, and also to spark innovation with them, like, hey, I didn't know we could do that. And that creates a design thinking. So the strategy is the same. It's about, having a digital core, building out a data monetization experience. Those stay the same. It's the Lego blocks that we get to build on top of that as the market changes, as the industry changes.
And I suppose we can't not talk about legacy when we talk about the IT strategy. So how are your companies incorporating issues of legacy, and indeed how do you deal with some of the challenges around legacy as you build or refresh your IT strategy?
Again, depends on what do you call legacy. We have 50-year-old legacy, we have 30-year-old, 10-year-old, and I think now 3-year-old is also beginning to become legacy.
Right.
We need to go to the digital and the mobile technologies. But legacy is an integral part of what we have to live with. However, how we make sure that we can enable them to keep up with this change of innovation and the rate of speed at which we have to deliver new functionality, as long as we can deliver that at the right cost. There is a balance between how much you want to invest in modernizing legacy versus how much you want to let legacy be where it is, because the cost to modernize legacy in some cases doesn't justify the return on the investment.
Right.
And especially in the wireline business when we look at it. So you will have to make those judgment calls. But at the end of the day, I think the key is to ensure that as we build the architecture for the strategic roadmap, we cater to how we abstract the legacy into the front, and we do not have a technology-based strategy, but rather a solutions-based strategy. We can always work with legacy.
I think to add to that, as you think about legacy, you have to think about what are the short-term pain points that you have today that you need to solve for, and what are the legacy sort of systems that are going to prevent you to be in the future.
Exactly.
Right? So I think that's the way that you could think about balancing the two.
And we actually took a lot of legacy and we moved it over to the cloud.
Right.
Never been done before, but then we had to do it, because if we didn't do it, we wouldn't be ready for digital.
Right.
Because on a legacy, in a retail business, the number of doors and the number of call centers is the traffic I get. But on a digital, it's the 100 million customers that I get at the same time. So the cost of scaling legacy to that is very different from how I can scale that in the cloud. So we had to go do some of those, but at the same time, we are not going to rip and replace legacy wholesale. So we had to make some conscious judgments on where we want to invest.
Right. Tom?
I would say we've been kind of fortunate that legacy is kind of just dealing with it has been built into the things that we funded and the strategy as a business in general. We've more than doubled in size in the last 5 or 6 years, and that has allowed us to sort of accept the fact that certain legacy systems weren't actually meeting the needs, and we've allowed that growth to kind of drive our change and shift into newer technologies or SaaS-based solutions that kind of don't require that big forklift upgrade quite as often.
Right. And Gail at Mercer?
I think for Mercer, what we started a modernization program, and the first point in that program was to really take a look at any obsolete technology in the portfolio, because that's, you don't want to have security, obsolete technology in your portfolio. So that was the, part one of the modernization program. Part two was, what is the business case for change? Because modernizing legacy can be a very expensive.
Yeah.
It hits your bottom line, so there's got to be
no glory.
It has to be a real business case to modernize that legacy platform, or you keep it and you just keep the wheels on the bus because the cost to modernize is far too much, and that's the part two. And the third is there a differentiator by wrapping a service or making some part of a legacy digital ready? So if you make it digital ready, you can add that capability or that feature in other value streams. So we tried to look at modernization in those three pillars.
Right. But it is part of your IT strategy.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Can I go to the polling question? And the question is coevolution a better term than alignment in respect of fostering a living strategy for IT? And we see 75% say yes, 25% say no. I won't ask who the 25% who disagree with me are, but can I come to maybe the panel and ask you to maybe reflect on this notion of coevolution? Do you think it's a better term in what we're looking to achieve with technology today than, let's say, alignment?
Yeah, absolutely. Coevolution, co-creation, whatever you want to call it. But I think what is key here is it is not a substitute for alignment. It is actually alignment is at table stakes. And then what happens on top of it is co-creation and co-evolution. That's the way we see it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I would see it is that co-evolution is that you're jointly coming to the table to define the strategy, and alignment is part of that.
Right.
But it's beyond that. I think more and more as IT executives, you need to see yourself as business leaders.
Right.
And that co-evolution is that you're co-owning and co-defining it with the business, and there's an assumption that there's an alignment there already because you're at the table.
Right. Tom?
The terminology probably doesn't matter as much as the actions. So I think I probably always called it alignment, but there was a lot of co-creation and co-evolution as part of it. I think that the term with that sort of co-evolution, though, drives probably a stronger level of partnership than the word alignment. So I think that's where you could make words matter a bit. But I'm happy to actually steal that and use that as I go forward. But I'm not going to do it from like yesterday we aligned, today we co-create. I think it's much more about the actions you take and the attitude and getting people on board.
Yeah. Gail?
Yeah, I really don't have anything to add. I mean, I just agree with everything.
What McKinsey said? That's what you agree with?
Of course.
What Vivek said.
Of course.
We're not ready to retire aligned. No, that's the key.
We've got just about 2 minutes left. Maybe a kind of a last-minute comment in relation to, let's say, the future of IT strategy. What do you see the future for IT strategy?
I think it will be very central to business strategy. That's the way I see it. When you look at the business strategy document, you will have to have a big part of the board document reflect what is the IT strategy. And as part of where technology is going with the digital natives and algorithmic age and what we have to do with data, especially with the amount of data for companies like us, data becomes a central part of the strategy of what we want to do as customer experience, as what we want to do with privacy. So central to that will be IT strategy. So to me, I think as I fast forward 5-10 years from now, it's going to be as pivotal for the business strategy.
Belkis?
No, this is a great point. I think it's going to be all around. I mean, from my view, it's going to be around the customer and the growth. How can you make sure that you're in a position that you could quickly pivot, right? So if you think about the greatest players out there, like Amazon. Amazon can pivot to any new business that they can because they have that agility to be able to just change their culture, their talent to support new business growth. So for me, in the next few years, it's going to be all about growth and customer focus.
Tom?
I mean, sort of like we've said before, the IT strategy is going to become less and less different than the business strategy, or we fully incorporate it, as Gail kind of mentioned that it is at Mercer. I think then the onus is on us to ensure we've got the right operating plans in place in terms of really being able to execute our piece of it, as it's looked at as a much broader piece and included. If I look at most of the business reviews today, probably only about 10 or 20% of them include a really direct, significant IT component. I think that will continue to shift over time.
Right, and increase.
Increase.
And final word to you, Gail.
As I've said, the lines will be blurred.
Right.
And those strategies will come together. But I also, my last point is, I think technology will create value and create new business models so that you won't know whether that business generated from a technology point of view or a business value proposition. So how we serve our clients, to your point, will be a combination of both.
Great.
You won't be able to separate them as we have in the past.
Right. It'll be just a camera.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Okay. So again, can I thank the panel and
Thank you.
for your
Thank you.
insightful
Thank you.
comments.